Hello everybody, Jim Townsend here again. Today I wanted to talk to you about terrorism. What is terrorism? Are you looking at the face of a terrorist? My government thinks so. They think that anybody that protests anything that they do is a terrorist, and they treat them accordingly. I wanted to tell you that my website is at townsend.b, and you can email me at jim@townsend.b if you have any comments, or leave a comment on YouTube. So how does one become a terrorist? You know, all my life I tried to improve my lot, to improve myself. I grew up on the street in the Lower East End of Vancouver. I left home at a very early age because of family problems, and I was subsequently put into foster homes, which were just the most despicable places that you can ever imagine. And I finally ended up in a group home in Chilliwack, which was just the most miserable place on the face of the earth. 3 close friends of mine committed suicide. That tells you what kind of a place that was. We had another problem though. We had a social worker who liked to molest all the children in there. When I was 14 years old, I got the short straw, and I had to say something about the social worker at the table. Now, I do suspect that I got fed the short straw, because even then I was known for having a big mouth and a fella that'd stick up for himself. Well, I told the social worker outright, I says, I don't like you sticking your hands up and down my legs and all this other sort of stuff. Well, everybody kind of tittered and giggled at the table, and nobody else said anything, so I kind of took the brunt of it. I got 50 across the bare ass with a razor strap. Well, I shut my mouth. I didn't say anything about it, but the faggot left me alone anyway, so I didn't friggin' care. Figured if everybody else didn't have the courage to say nothing, then they were gonna have to live in the misery for themselves. So I never said anything. But then 15 years later, I'm watching TV, and what do I see? Bill Morrow, my social worker, just got convicted of 74 counts of child molesting. You know, so all my life I improved myself. I never got an education while I was under the protection of the Children's Act. I was a ward of the courts under the protection of the Children's Act, not a juvenile delinquent. A ward of the courts under the protection of the Children's Act. It was kind of a phony friggin' system. They should have left me on the street. I was better off. There. But at any rate, I saw an awful lot, and I always tried to better myself. I got ticketed as journeyman painter and decorator. I'm a certified renovations contractor. I went from one thing to another, always trying to improve myself. I eventually made it to university. I never got through university. I went for 3 years, and then lost out to an equal opportunity program, which had to be the biggest kick in the teeth that you ever seen. But I played on computers, and you see, that was my forte. As a kid, I used to hide in the library, and I had access to computers, so I taught myself how to program. I had an interest in the particle beta groups, so I always played on the internet and stuff like that. I wrote internet applications. In 1996, I started noticing all the child porn on the internet, and at one point in my life, I volunteered to be an auxiliary RCMP. So I'd learned a little bit about the RCMP and their computers and how they operate and stuff like that. And I was pretty convinced they were good people. So I went to them. My wife and I, we assembled a 3-inch thick report about child pornography on the internet, and we brought it into the Langley RCMP. If you're wondering about what kind of pornography, just go over to my blog. I have a blog at gentiledefenseleague.org. or org here, and look up Can Even Prayer Fix This, and then take a look at some of those links, like kingsizevideos.com, if you want to see real on the internet. So I decided, my wife and I decided to say something about this. So we brought a report into the RCMP, and within 2 months we went out one Saturday afternoon with our 4 kids, and we came home to an empty house. All of my computers were gone, every disk in the house. The RCMP never arrived until midnight, and then they refused to investigate. My wife was in a bad car accident about a month and a half later. I no longer believe that was an accident. The same Surrey RCMP lost all 3 witness reports, and ICBC made our lives an absolute hell. Now I want to show you the face of a terrorist. You see, there we are, big terrorist family. Big terrorist family, eh? Look at those. Now, isn't that just what you expect to see when you see terrorists? Well, Not 2 months after we deliver this report, all of a sudden we get reassessed by CRA, Canada Revenue Agency. I'd paid all my taxes. All my life I was proud to pay my taxes. I always felt like a kid in a candy store looking in. I was proud to brag to my friends that I paid more in taxes than they even made working. I contributed my fair share. CRA, the employees, contribute nothing. Well, that's just my fight with CRA, and I won't get into this at this point in time. But suffice to say, they turned around and reassessed us for the year before, and I paid it. I paid those taxes. And then we had to go to welfare as a consequence of that. Our rent was $1,200 a month. They decided $1,200 a month was too expensive, so they would pay $600 a month. So there we were with our 4 children, living in our car on the street. We couldn't get any assistance from social services or anything else. All of the social programs I paid for all my life, paid through the nose, paid a good dollar, nothing, got nothing, nothing but shit from assholes, every friggin' government office that we went into. And we eventually started realizing, hey, why is it that every government office in the world is unloading on us here in Canada? And eventually I started making the connections. You take a look at that smut on the internet, there's even more of it than ever. Well, now you know why I'm a terrorist, as these people would like to say, or whatever. You know, I have no record of violence, never have had, don't have a criminal record. Look at the RCMP's record, and you should look at the RCMP's record. If you go to GentileDefenseLeague.net, I write a book called Without Prejudice that outlines exactly what's going on in our country. You see, my response to getting into a big argument with the government and with CRA and everything else, see, I'm a computer professional. I write artificially intelligent software. I wrote a software emulation of a human brain called Datamorph, and I put all my information in it. You can't lie to Datamorph. I programmed truth tables in there. And eventually I started to realize there's something really, really wrong here. So I worked hard within the system. You see, I've been the chairman of the Computer and Data Committee for the Reform Party. I know that shyster in Ottawa. Personally, I'd still like to ask Stephen Harper what happened to the $200,000 worth of new office furniture whenever you guys got kicked up into new corporate headquarters. These people have always been the same ilk, nothing but filth. Well, I worked myself into a position as president of the Alberta Party, and I wrote a book at that point in time called Freedom Canada. Now, it was really interesting as I had a couple RCMP officers on my board of directors that kept undermining everything that I had to do. Well, when I was trying to publish my book, I met a most interesting man named Elmer Knutson. Elmer Knutson used to be the leader of the Western Canada Concept Party, and I think the greatest compliment I've ever got in my life was the day that Elmer put his arm around me and he said, "Bud," he says, "if I'd have had you, I wouldn't have needed the rest of that party. We'd gone to Ottawa ourselves." He was a great man, and he told me how the RCMP had taken apart the Western Canada Concept Party and exactly how our country is run by lawyers and really the true nature of what Canada is. And I have that man to thank for taking me from this point of understanding to this point of understanding. Now, my fellow Canadians, if you really think there's something wrong with this country, then I urge you, please go over to GentileDefenseLeague.net and read my book, because if you think we are terrorists, I want to ask you something. What do you really think this country's all about? Peace, y'all. I do love you.